some of the natural language processing, for a different term, or the ways that human beings think, maybe. And again, we don't want to get too much into it because there's definite arguments against that. But artificial intelligence itself is the ability for software to start a path. We've got this Turing test, to start to get into this uncanny valley, but also to start to make decisions potentially autonomously, but more deeper than that, to start to act more and more like a human being does. Not necessarily to be sentient, and it's very important that we don't start thinking that, and not to be a supercomputer and all-knowing and like a god, because we're not there yet. But artificial intelligence, it just means that it has a lot more brain than a calculator, but most probably your artificial intelligence in your brain is so much cleverer than artificial intelligence is at the moment. Artificial intelligence kind of comes from, the reason why I don't like to talk about the history is because artificial intelligence, if you can all remember like playing computer games, if anyone's played a computer game, you've actually played against an artificial intelligence. And that could have been 1980s, and you were playing chess on one of those little beep 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 beeps. That was technically artificial intelligence, right? It's when it then started to get into things like when Demis Habblis, who's a friend of mine, I know very well over the last 30 years, and I know all this stuff for the future. They created this system, the AI system, that could beat someone at a game called Go. And again, this is, you could listen, put in Bing on this, right? And this was one of the things that artificial intelligence was meant to not be able to do, because Go was too complicated, was too nuanced, was too like art, was too. I think there's more permutations in the game of Go than there are stars in the sky. It was meant to be unbelievably complicated. But if you remember, before then, AI wasn't meant to be able to beat a human being at chess. If you remember, there was the classic, wasn't it? Deep Blue and all these other things, right? So each time artificial intelligence gets better and better, it does something that we didn't think it could do. Like, it was only 4 or 5 years ago we were saying it wouldn't be able to create images, and yet generative AI, they're working out that it's created more images in the last year than the first 150 years of photography.
Wow.
That's the level we're at now. And this bit's really important. It might feel a little bit geeky, but it's really important to realize when we say AI, it's a bit like saying, I don't know, computers. It's just a too big a term, right? So you should always think, what AI? Which AI are you talking about? Because AIs are a little bit like people, which when I do my keynotes, I say this and people get a little bit shocked, but it's the truth of the matter. AI is much more like having an intern or having something you can train, and each AI is better at different things. So there are some AI models that are brilliant at, coding, and then there are others that are fantastic using words. And it's that bit that we've got to kind of, especially around education, we've got to start getting better at and knowing, not only because we then can teach it to the next generation, but as teachers, it's hugely important. And if we are not careful here, we might overgeneralize too much. Like, it's like when people say, where's AI right now? Well, there's 84 different large language models you can use with AI. Each one is trained on a different data set. So they're like lots of different people. But where's the general intelligence right now with artificial intelligence? It's higher than we thought it was going to be. And that's someone who does keynotes, and I'm a tech futurist, and even I think it's higher than I thought it was going to be.
So within AI, and you've talked about the various large language models and recognizing that all AIs are going to be delivering and have strengths in certain areas. The one that's obviously come to the fore and I guess has captured the imagination in the last 18 months is particularly the generative AI. 18 months ago, it wasn't even on the agenda. Now it's literally writing the agenda. It's come to the forefront of our consciousness and our everyday lives and business. What is generative AI specifically for our audience today? What are its particular characteristics?
Well, generative AI kind of refers to a type of AI that can generate new content, especially around images, videos, now even music. There are things now like Udio, which only came out last month, which honestly, it is stunning what you can do. You type in a prompt and it will create you a piece of music, which didn't exist before.
Wow.
And that generative ability of the AI to become generative, to generate things, is why so many people have got so excited. The reason why ChatGPT, which is from OpenAI, and most probably the one that most people have either used or have heard of, the reason why everyone got the most out of that really is the number of people that started using it. It went viral. I did a TEDx talk in April 2022, and I was showing people some of these kind of more immaterial kind of bit weird, dreamy looking pictures that were appearing, and there's things like Mid-Journey and Stable Diffusion, and I won't bore you with all the details of all the different image creators there, but each one of them's got better and better and better. Each one's got better and better and better. Yeah, and so you're now in this position where with generative AI, you can create things that are perfect for a classroom. Absolutely. Can we create images that could become videos, that become movies that you could sell? We're not quite there yet, but we're pretty close. So from a teaching point of view, an education point of view, instead of having to get someone to design something for your PowerPoint or something brand new for the book you're creating, or even just for the lesson, literally just for the lesson, you could now type it in, and as part of your lesson plan or scheme of work. Teaching has got extremely difficult. Yeah, and there's a load. I'm not going to unpack all the different reasons, but we know them. You're teachers, you know the reasons why. And one of the key things we can do with technology is to alleviate that burden, alleviate some of that time stress, and that's what these things are good at. Anyway, as you talked about generative AI, the other one we talked about very briefly there, and it might be worth discussing from just from a kind of tech point of view, is the large language models, which these things are all based on, right? So each of these large language models, LLMs, and now short language models or small language models, as they're now being created. This is just the subset of data and understanding and algorithms that's underneath all this stuff, especially with language, which is why large language models, right? And the reason why it's so exciting is because the ability of the AI is to do with the quality of the large language model and the data set that started off. Right. So let me give you an example of this one, right? So let's say, for example, and because I know Demis, and sorry, Demis, if this is paraphrasing 20 years of work. That's the other thing worth thinking about. We think AI has been around for 2 years. No, it's been going for 20 years as an industry, if not more so. In fact, really started in 1967. But I won't bore everyone with that detail. The point being really is with the Gemini, let's say the Google one. This is I'm not affiliated with them in any way. Completely agnostic when it comes to training all these things. But Gemini is particularly good at certain things because of the data that Google put in to start off with, which trained the large language model. Right. Yeah. And the training of these large language models is billions of pounds worth of effort and energy and compute, as well as human interactions, etc. But Google's particularly good at health tech, for example. But that's because its large language models, the different ones that it created many moons ago, by the way, were trained on that data to start off with, because there's an awful lot of data in health tech. Yeah. So if you ask Google Gemini to write a fantastic poem from Shakespeare, it might not be very good at it. It actually wouldn't be bad at all, but it wouldn't be great, right? If you knew the nuances, you'd be like, oh, that's not great. But it's not bad. It's most probably a B. Yeah. But if you said to it instead, diagnose cancers quicker than a doctor can, it gets an A+, because that's what it can now do. Yes. Yeah. And so again, it comes back down to these, you might think kind of silly terminologies, but they're actually quite important, because the data set you train the LLM on will predict its future, just like teaching a child or teaching an adult anything. Like, you wouldn't go to a doctor and say, oh, I've got a problem with my car, and then be cross the doctor didn't get it. Yes. Because he's done 7 years of doctoring school, so to speak. Proves that I'm not a doctor there. There you go. Nor am I good at cars and garages. So this whole analogy is going to fall down. But you wouldn't ask him to become multimodal and multitaskable. Now, the same principle here with the AI, especially around education, I think. There's going to be certain AI systems that are beautiful at certain things, like fantastic at geography and English, but terrible at maths. Yeah. Okay? No good with the science side of things, but amazing with creating images. And so as leaders, our job now is to not say, okay, computers, do it all. Our job now is to realize that there is nuance in this. And actually, we've got to pick out the right tools for the right job. The old classic, isn't it? If you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Right? Yes. Yeah. And now this is getting more complicated. And of course, as you know, in education, it's those nuances that are hugely important. That's the joy of teaching.
So I want to expand on that a little bit more, because part of the basic premise of generative AI, and you've highlighted it there in terms of time and productivity and efficiency, is to produce that outcome. But the outcome is only one part of a investigative process. The other part is the curiosity and the creativity and the thinking and the research that goes into securing that outcome. And whether it's in business or whether it's in education, my concern is that in the desire to focus solely on the outcome, we lose the very essence of what we create in terms of curiosity, knowledge expansion, because we've outsourced the process, if you like. How do we find AI that enhances our curiosity and creativity rather than dilutes it, I guess, is the essence of my question.
That is a fantastically deep question. And it brings up a really good point, which is the future of education is going to be the ability to ask the right questions.
Yes.
That will be the future. The future of education is going to be much more around soft skills, much more around the things that make human beings more humane and more human, like collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. These are going to be just vital skills for the next generation. Yes. Not just because of the political and, you could argue the planet problems that we have and these big old things, but because the computers are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But there is something deeper underneath all this, which is a curriculum move. I was writing new curriculums when social media came out, and that took a long time to get social media to be part of the curriculum, right? Now we're going to have AI. Now AI has moved quicker than computers, but how long did we take to take on board computers? I'm old enough to remember when we wouldn't take on board calculators. Yeah. It took 13 years to accept a calculator was going to be part of maths. And still people said, calculators will destroy maths. Maths will never be the same again, and no one will ever be able to add up. I have a feeling, and I might be wrong, that actually math and engineering didn't disappear in the last 20 years. If I had the power, would we change the curriculum instantly? Yes, but that's a 10-year-old project. Yeah. If we really think about the future, utilizing technology, not just AI, but just technologies, the technologies are not the most important thing. It's the human being using the technology. So one of the biggest things, which we don't teach in schools at the moment, and we might not for, I hope it's going to be a couple of years, but it might be 5 years, are things like prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the ability to get a better result out of the AI that you're using. By the way, prompt engineering is just management. It's just management of an intelligence, which isn't your own. If you were still teaching people in the fields how to cut corn, but the tractor came along, then that world changes fundamentally. And it does change fundamentally. Now, does that mean that we don't need farming? What's madness? We've got more farming than we've ever had. We've created more food than we've ever had, right? And there's more people on the planet now than there's ever been. So I think it's the opposite. I think intellectually, with the ability to use artificial intelligence, a skill that we have to teach the next generation and learn ourselves, we then lift up the potential for human beings to be amazing. Yes. Because so much of the cognitive load is taken by the machine. We as educators have an amazing opportunity to be able to flip the classroom, which we've all been saying for years that we wanted to do, haven't we? We've all said we wanted to be able to do personalized learning plans. We've all said we wanted to give an enriched experience, but we didn't have the technology to do it. Yes. Artificial intelligence, with the right prompts, with the right skills and knowledge, means that we can do all those things that we wanted to do in the past. And I can still remember lobbying governments, literally 2 decades ago, saying, please get computers inside schools. Now we've all got mobile phones, and now people are saying, lobbying the government, please get mobile phones out of schools. It's one of the oddest things I've ever seen. Now, I'm hoping that this next jump of artificial intelligence isn't met with the same kind of resistance. Yes. Because the next generation, it's going to be part of their lives. Computers and artificial intelligence will be part of their lives, whether they carry them in their pocket, whether they have them as headsets, whether they wear them on a ring. Like, I don't know where you're going to go with it, but we know it's going to be part of it. So what we need to do is not only embrace the technology, this is key, Paul, that's why it's such a great question. We've got to embrace the ability to teach the love of learning. That's the thing. We're going to make people excited by the process. I mean, if the artificial intelligence can give you all the answers, you've got to be excited about wanting to ask it. And then be able to say, that might not be true. Because it depends which AI you ask, and it depends how you ask it. Exactly the same with human beings.
So that's really, really, really interesting. You started that answer with talking about the critical nature of the important nature of critical thinking, creativity, curiosity to the future of business, future of education, and so on. Those soft skills that are critical. And if you look at the World Economic Forum reports, Adobe reports, Foresters, multiple others, will all cite critical thinking, analytical thinking, creativity in the top 3 to 4 to 5 skills for employees, what are desired by employers. Then you talked about prompt engineering and the importance of bringing that into the classroom so people can utilize generative AI and other AIs more effectively to ask the right questions and to get the, hopefully the right answers as a result of those, to set the context in the right way. I just wonder whether, we're kind of missing a trick. We can utilize the lessons we're learning in terms of prompt engineering, the way we write the questions, the thinking that needs to go into getting that thinking right, and then reversing that out into turning that into the way we ask all of our questions, not just of prompt and AI, but the way we query the world, the curiosity we place upon the world. So rather than losing our curiosity to AI, could we use prompt engineering as the trigger to utilize the critical thinking outside of AI immediately?
I honestly, mate, what you're saying there is it brings tears to my eyes, literally, because becoming a boss to the AI systems I now use has made me a better person.
Yes.
Because I've realized when I don't have clarity or consistency or politeness or any of these things, that the output is worse by the machine, because it's very easily quantifiable. It's very data driven, right? So I do, and by the way, this is, if you're using AIs, you should also do the same thing. So being nice to it is a very good idea, because like being nice to an intern would be a good idea. You could shout at the intern and say it's got it wrong, but actually, isn't it, you've most probably prompted it in the wrong way. Did you really give it an example of what great work was? No. Well, then how does it know what great work is? Did you, was it particularly concise, and did you have clarity to it, right? What else can you do? Were you polite at the end of it? Did you say please and thank yous? That's a strange one, but it's true. There's lots of these weird things that you can do with prompt engineering. But actually, when you understand it, take a step back, it's not weird. It's just how you should treat a human being.
Yes.
For some reason, when we use computers, we think we should just type in, write me a blog. Okay, what kind of blog? Create me a lesson plan. Okay, what grade do you want? How? What's it based on? What are the values of the school? All these things. Now, what's exciting, and this is why it's exciting, is you can bring all of that into an AI that never forgets.
Yes.
Okay, so you could have a centralized point where you have, I'm like, this should be every teacher's dream. I know it is, because my sister's a teacher, my mum, dad they're all teachers. You can go into a centralized place and you could say, oh, what's a great lesson plan for this thing? What's a great scheme of work for this thing? And it doesn't just give you the one that you already got from the centralized place, which we all know, we just yoink it from someone else. It then changes it by 12% based on what it knows about your kids. Or you say to it, actually, I've got 5 people in the class, and they're whatever grade they are. Or you could even go even further and say, actually, create me 32 individual lessons plans for these particular children. Now, this is not possible in the way we used to do it. It's impossible to do that. This is the same as saying, when we started manufacturing food, lots more people could eat, and that's true. And you could argue, but the food wasn't better, Dan. No, but there's more food. Now, we then made a choice, sadly, I think, where we overdid that and we just manufactured more food, and now it's processed and now whatever. And I get the argument there. But we're not there with AI right now. We're just in that great bit where we can do more. We can do stuff that we could never think we could do before. We are in charge of this fifth industrial revolution much more than we were in the other ones, because the barrier to entry into changing our lives and changing the lives of those we teach is so much lower, because it's literally just the motivation to do so. It's literally just the motivation to do so, right? So if you're saying, oh, well, I can't learn prompt engineering, it's too complicated, it's just because it's the word prompt engineering. Because I can absolutely assure you, it's just soft skills. You can learn it, very easy to learn, it takes you an hour, right? Come on the course, go for it. And then you might say, oh, the AI landscape's too complicated. Well, that's the point of the AI teacher course. We're agnostic and we can teach you different things, but I can guarantee you none of it's complicated. It's not programming. It's not techie. There's no coding. Now, this is why it's so exciting, because the coding to get the best out of the machines that you decide to pick is basically the human language you already know. I mean, that's why it's so exciting. The only thing you might then say is, Dan, we've got to maybe create something that sits in a server, which is our school, which is our data, and then it's going to feed off itself and understand things and therefore create the kind of lesson plans that we want in our school. Yeah, Absolutely. That's the future of education. Is it possible? It's possible right now. It's possible right now. Does it mean that you need to talk to maybe your CTO about that? Yeah. But didn't you need to talk to them about a server, laptops, internet access?
Yes.
You didn't need to sit there and go, oh my goodness, I need to build my own server. What? No, you just bought servers, didn't we? We just bought servers. Did you have to learn how to? You might have had to learn how to use a laptop. You didn't need to learn how to build a laptop. And I would most probably argue most schools don't know or don't have someone who builds the computers. Yes. They would outsource it, And that's why I always think that an analogy done by a very famous AI person is he thinks that AI is a bit like electricity. And I think there is some merit to that. We can get too het up with what kind of electricity and where did it come from? And do I need to know everything about electricity? I know nothing about electricity, Paul, apart from that I plug something in and something else works. I'm a guy that wants to make the toast so I can feed my family. I don't need to know about electricity.
Yeah.
But then again, I maybe I'm not as geeky as I need to be.
There's an implicit, I think, belief or understanding that what we're getting back from generative AI is largely factual, and there are all sorts of challenges around hallucinations, false information that's coming back to us as well, that perhaps we aren't as aware of as we should be. I think what's perhaps a more challenging thing over the medium term is a lack of recognition of the inherent bias that may exist in many of the large language models that, as those who are in the industry know, new AIs are built on foundations of other open source large language models, so they carry the bias inherent in the data sets. And you gave the example earlier about the 32 individual lesson plans for children and so on. We engage AI to utilize that. We don't know what bias is behind the recommendations that come back for those 32 lesson plans. How do we acknowledge? How do we change? What do we do about the inherent bias that exists in the AI models? How do we compensate for it? Can it be relevant for education as a result of that?
Again, this is the billion-dollar question or multi-billion-dollar question. But I think it's not actually about money. I think that large businesses might make it just about the money. Right?
Yes.
The reality is actually this is about human beings. And the thing that, even though I'm a tech futurist and I do keynotes around AI, technology, future of work, but none of those talks are about getting rid of human beings. We're not talking about getting rid of human beings. What we're saying is we can increase productivity so human beings have more time to do the stuff that computers can't do. Now, you're talking about the hallucinations and fact checking. Absolutely. You're a teacher. You're an education department. You have to check that this stuff's right. Just like, by the way, we used to have to do 10 years ago with Google. Google didn't mean that it was true. Now, you could even argue, but libraries don't mean it's true. Who actually has a facet on the moment which is pure truth? You could argue that's not possible.
Yes.
Yeah, but for a fact as an educationist, you're going to weigh it all up. We're going to weigh it up, right? So if the AI says this is true, you can't, we're not talking about creating lesson plans and ideas that human beings have never seen and it goes into the mind of another human being, because that is just, in my opinion, that's bad, right? It's like you going on the internet and watching something on YouTube and then saying, yes, right, okay, kids, I'm going to teach today about chemtrails because I just watched a video about chemtrails and I believe they're true because this guy told me. Now, could be exactly the same with AI. AI might say, oh, well, we've worked out that chemtrails, there's lots of chemtrails information out there. Perhaps it's true. Now, we're going to have to, as a world, kind of be really wary of disinformation.
Yes.
I think that AI biases is not where it's going to come from.
Right.
It's going to come from the places where kids have already been and have been for a while. We have a much bigger thing to think about. And by the way, I think AI can help with this, with social media and disinformation and YouTube and all this stuff. Now, again, as I say, my whole family really are teachers, lots of us are. And I get cross when all of the weight is put at the feet of education and teachers. And the government goes, well, the teachers need to sort that out at schools. It's like, actually, this is a bigger thing. We need to get parents involved, right? We need to get governments involved. We need to have a government that cares about the education of young people to the extent that it will step in and not allow large businesses to make money off misinformation, because they shouldn't be allowed to. That should be illegal, just like, I don't know, just like pollution was illegal. we had an industrial revolution. At some point, someone went, wait a minute, we can't see. This is smog everywhere. This is awful. We need to clear ourselves up, right?
Yes.
Same principle here. And this is intellectually. And I know we could get a little bit too deep here, but I think that's kind of the point of today too, is that we can't just say that something is bad inherently because we know it could be bad. It's actually our job to make sure that we filter and make sure we test it. And that's all I'm asking from anyone who uses AI is imagine it's like, or think of it like this way, instead of thinking like it's, some people think it's like water. I use this in my keynotes all the time to the metaphors, or it's like electricity, or it's like just computers on top of each other. I just think of it like an intern. Just for now, just for your own brains to kind of get that metaphor around, only because you wouldn't say to the intern, create my lesson plan and then deliver it without checking it, because you would be a bad manager or a bad, you'd just be bad advice, right? And imagine, if you will, if you take it a step further, as AI get better, so they'll become older interns, maybe become a graduate intern, and maybe you can say, oh, actually, I've seen, she's done 10 of these lesson plans, they've all been cracking, right? Just crack on and make those lesson plans and schemes to work. When now, this is why it gets really exciting, because we are almost there now, because large language models have learned so much, and this is an oversimplification, so if you're a CTO on the call, I apologize, this isn't true, but it'll work as a metaphor for everybody else, right? Large language models have got so good, we can now squish them down and make them into small language models, and we can make these things open source and closed source. And again, my apologies, CTOs, I know not officially open source, but what it allows us to do is to create much smaller things that have the ability to do what educationalists would want them to do, but to hold those things inside a normal server or even a laptop. And so it has its own data. So any concerns around data privacy for the school, we can now get round because the technologies are now small enough to be able to do it in-house.
Yes.
Now, this was not possible 6 months ago. It's only possible now, but it gets rid of the big, elephant in the room, which is how do we make sure this stuff's safe? How do we make sure that some massive company is not using our data or spying on us? By the way, I don't think they would be anyway, but you might want to think about it now. This is the same, and now CTO's back in the room. This is the same with the internet and filters and firewalls and all that stuff we've been talking about for a decade. And does this now mean, yes, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, we can't just leave it up to the machines. As schools and organizations, we're going to have to look at our budgets and say, okay, it's not just the job of the CTO. This cannot just be one person's job to now manage this multiple opportunity where AIs can do loads of different things. Yes, this might potentially bring in things like cybersecurity. I don't think it does at the moment, but it could. But more importantly, just like you're not allowed, little Jimmy is not allowed to see indecent stuff on the internet at school. Well, they can't use an indecent AI at school. So the big question for us all now is, and it's right now, it's what is the AI policy for the school?
Yes.
What is our AI policy? How do we enforce it? When is it right and wrong? And believe you me, this is not talking about using ChatGPT to pass an exam. Okay, we're not talking about that. You have to move beyond that. AI, even the biggest companies in the world know that AI detection isn't true. Okay, and that's because all you need is a decent prompt. You need a decent prompt and put it through 2 AIs, and no AI can see if that was AI created. Okay, so if you've been told that AI detection is possible, that is just somebody trying to sell you something or just trying to scare you. AI detection isn't possible. And by the way, if you look at the amount of young people using AI at the moment, it's not being detected. But the question for you will be, is what's the AI policy for the school? Now, this comes down to things like, I don't know, if a young person brought their own laptop from home, would it be able to go on the internet?
Yeah.
Would it be able to go into the back end? Most probably not, right? You'd have a certain area you put it into. This will be exactly the same. How often can they use AI in the classroom? Is it only in certain classes, or is it in all classes? Do they need to say when they're using it, etc.? These are things that we need to discuss. But the bigger one underneath all this is, please do not, and this is really key because we do this all the time, do not leave it up to the machine to do all the work, because it can't.
Yes.
So we do need to employ more people to help with this massive opportunity. We cannot just go, oh, it's okay, because this guy knows or this lady knows about servers, they know about AI, because that's not the case. Also think about that almost from a board level as well. You've really got to start thinking, where just like we did with computers, 10 to 20 years ago, someone had to become the ideas champion. We had to get more of them in. There was more budget needed, all these other things. It's exactly the same, except this one now has the potential to alleviate, I would think, about half of the problems that teachers and schools face. It's that exciting.
Wow. Dan, we always end each of these webinars with a summary of 3 concise and final pieces of actionable wisdom for our education leaders. And we use a variation of the TES acronym to help embed these points in our minds. So T for TES, T is for talk. What is the most important thing education leaders, principals, and so on need to do? And it probably chimes in a little bit to the AI policy you've just discussed. What's the most important thing they need to do to effectively communicate both the benefits and the challenges of AI within their school or their college of educational establishment? How do they best communicate what AI's potential is, both from a positive and a negative perspective?
Well, it's a big one. So what I'll do is I'll actually create something. You can come find me, just find dansodergren.com, and I'll pop something on there. I'll find out the AIteachercourse.com.
Amazing. Thank
I'll
you.
pop 2 blogs on there because it's such a big point. One of the key ones is this is a point of complex change, okay, and uncertainty, because it's happening so quickly. And so it's actually not one answer, but the leaders have to be able to communicate the visions. You have to think about the vision of it. So you basically got to get excited yourself. And if you're not excited by AI and what it can do and how much time it can save teachers and the fact it'll change your school forever, that's a problem, because you've got to be motivated and excited. And believe me, it can, but it's just a growth mindset. It's just a different way of thinking. You've got to get yourself on board first. And then you've got things like the skills. Do your teachers have the skills? Because if you don't have the skills, then you're probably just going to create anxiety. You're going to say, we've got this brilliant thing, AI is just coming around the corner, it's going to change education forever. And they go, oh, how do you use it? And you go, oh, I don't know either. Right. That's a skills problem, right? And this, by the way, is the same for every business. It's the same for every opportunity when it comes around. So you've got skills, you've got vision, you've got skills, you've got incentives. What are the incentives for teachers to share this information? What happens if I don't know, a geography teacher makes a fantastic prompt that saves them so much time? Are they motivated to give it to somebody else? How do they share that knowledge? Now, incentives can come in a variety of different ways, and we know how beautiful schools are with their cultures, and it might just naturally happen. But as a leader, how do you talk it up so it happens more? You've got the resources. Right now, are you one of the schools that's just saying, oh, okay, teachers, go and use ChatGPT 3.5? 3.5 is free to use it. Please take anything to this podcast. Do not do that. Chat 3.5 is like asking a 16-year-old what to do. It will lie to you. It will get things wrong. Of course it was. It's an infant technology. Yes. Asking for, and by the way, these models are like £20 a month. Okay, £20 a month can make somebody 40% more productive at their job. For £20 a month. If you're a leader, that's insane numbers, and you just like buy all of it, right? Now, yes. And with Microsoft and the other people, and I've got to be careful here with words because we are the AI teacher course, we're completely agnostic. But with Microsoft, because it put all that money into OpenAI, it has the opportunity to start utilizing that in the back end of all of its products. Okay, so your school right now, if it's using 365, I can guarantee you doesn't know it's sitting on an absolute gold mine of savings of time, because you won't know that you've got Copilot inside PowerPoint. You've got Copilot inside ShareDrive. You've got Copilot. Copilot is the AI version of OpenAI's in the Microsoft world, right? So that's the thing. So resources, you might not have to spend very much more, but my advice is definitely spend it because of the amount of time and energy and beautifulness that you'll save. And also you'll help teachers' mental health. It's so important. And then the last one is action plan. As a leader, do you have an action plan? Do you have your AI policies in place? And again, as individuals, you can get to this bit now when you're overwhelmed. But the whole point of this is a big change. So just give yourself time, but honestly, don't give yourself the kind of time that education sometimes does, where it thinks it's got years, because we've got months. We don't have years. If you don't have an AI policy in place at the moment, please go and Google it or Bing it or whatever search engine you use, or even the AI system itself. Please create some AI policies. And then, of course, that's a big thing for your school, as a leader, is to make sure that everyone's motivated for this change. And you've got those other bits, the pillars in place. I'll write a blog about it. You must probably have all heard of the complex mechanism for change, but if you haven't, I'll give you the graphic.
I think you've answered the E and the S from that TES acronym for excite and sustain as well in that one answer. So you've said skills, vision, motivation, get excited yourself as a leader, and take an action plan and an AI policy. I mean, that sounds like a great bundle of things to consider. What is the one thing tomorrow that they could do to start the process of taking control of the way they implement AI within their organization, as opposed to responding? I mean, they've got to do, everyone's got to do all of these things: skill, vision, motivation, excitement. But what's the one thing, if anyone's sitting there thinking, this is so big, where do I start? Where do they start? What do they start with tomorrow?
Well, it's very interesting to say that. I think there's two things, and one of them is kind of slightly pretends to the other. Number one, have you used ChatGPT for yourself? Have you tried to create something with a decent AI model with a decent prompt?
Yes.
If you have, awesome, we can skip ahead. If you haven't done the basics, like have you ever gone on a computer? No, I've never gone on the internet. Okay, let's get you on the internet, and let's get you on the internet properly, and let's get you on a computer that works with the right software in it, so it's good for you.
Yes.
That's key, isn't it? Because that's part of your experiential learning yourself, but also you have to have motivation to do so. Then the next question goes, and it's really easy. It's, have the senior leadership team done all these things before? Now, the answer might be, damn, of course we have. It's been around for a year and a half. Of course we have. We're not at that stage. Okay, cool. Have you tried more than one AI system? Well, you might be like, actually, I didn't know there was more than one. Oh, that's interesting. Well, what's Claude? Okay, well, find out what the Claude. And this is literally, you can find it out. I mean, come on the AI teacher course, of course. That'd be great. Bring us in. We can help train it. But the reality is that you can do all this stuff yourselves, right? But the senior leadership can also do this. But it's the same with anything. It's like, if you've got a massive change coming, your senior leadership team have to be on board. Otherwise, you just get resistance.
Yes.
And you're not in a position where you can have human resistance against a technological thing, because it won't make any difference, because it's already happening now.
Yeah.
You know, so the real big thing is it's just a mental mind shift to realize it's happening now. And it's not, oh, you have to get on board, otherwise you'll be blown away. But the reality is it started happening a year and a bit ago, maybe even 3 years ago, and you just didn't know. Now you do know. You're in a position where you can take advantage of it, because all you need here is a laptop and the internet and the wish and desire to find out more about it, and maybe £20 a month. This is the lowest barrier to entry into an opportunity that's pretty much existed ever in the world. Yeah. You know, we're not talking about you have to go out and buy a tractor and learn how to do it, learn how to drive. It's a very, very simple thing. So yeah, I just simplify it for everyone. Make sure that you're excited too, and just be really aware that I think the young people are already using AI a lot. And so what I really want from this is that teachers understand that actually it's going to be their job to know more, just like we did with social media. We started having to learn more ourselves, so then we could help young people, not be damaged by social media. And we're in that position now with AI. We've got to make sure that we start reminding them about critical thought and thinking, and really help them through this bit, because their minds are too important to let the AI machines, kind of embed themselves without having some kind of human defense. I actually think that AI now means that we can become more human than ever, because the teaching part, that heavy lifting part of teaching, we can get rid of that, and we can go back to what teachers love, which is teaching and holding hands and developing minds. And that's why I get so excited by it.
That's a beautiful way to finish, Dan. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Paul. Thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the TES Leading and Learning webinar. As I mentioned, I will include all of the links to the references that Dan noted in our conversation and the links that accompany this publication. But if you would like to check out his AI course for teachers, go to aiteachercourse.com. So I'm Paul, host of the TES Leading and Learning webinar. Thank you once again for watching. I look forward to seeing you next month.